of the Orchestra, that terrific Bordeaux blend. If you haven't tasted it, well, I'm in for a treat, and you can watch me being in for a treat in about 15 minutes or so. But before we get to Azelle, we go to somebody who just a few years ago, if you'd mentioned her name, you might not have known who she was, although you probably would have had her wine, because she used to do all of the still wine at Graham Beck. Then when Graham Beck decided bubbles is the way of the loves them, so we're going to stick with them. She decided to move on, and in the space of almost no time at all, she's become just about the hottest property in South African winemaking. Sorry, Eben Sadi, but this is your new benchmark. And you kind of thought she must have photos of John Platter in the shower that she's threatened to post on the internet, because he keeps throwing 5 stars at everything she does. But then you drink the wine and you realize it really is that good. I've got to know her over the last year or so, I've got to know her wines particularly well. So I'm really excited to say hello and good evening to Erica Obermeier.
Hello, Dan. It's lovely to connect again. We just said that we're looking forward to the traffic jam at 5 o'clock, and that's hooking up with Dan Nicol and a glass of good wine. So thank you for having us, and it's awesome. Thank you for the amazing introduction.
Well, thank you for supplying the wine, which I happily took off you last year when we sat down together at Saint and enjoyed some wine in person. Distant memories, though, is drinking wine together. We're now drinking very separately or over the internet. Well, what's the last month or two been like for you? How have you been, and how's the Erica Obermeier brand been doing?
It's been a really amazing 2020 or run up to harvest. I was incredibly excited about 2020, as they said. And yeah, we went into harvest with a lot of new business opening up in Europe specifically. So the brand is still pretty new, and I'm very excited about the new business. And then when you're in harvest, it's you run wine, and it's just the adrenaline around harvest is amazing. And then Corona happened, and it literally felt like 10 seconds. We rushed to get everything done because we were worried that we won't be able to go to the cellar. 5 hours before lockdown, we received the good news that we were allowed to carry on. So yeah, it's been good.
The story of Erica Obermeier is just it's remarkable, and I think it's worth a quick snapshot. It could fill a couple of books, but the very simple version. You were at Graham Beck. The still wines came to an end, and some great wines you used to make there. And you had a big decision to make, and you took that plunge. Looking back now, it was the obvious thing to do. But I'm sure when it happened, it was a very nervous time for you, stepping out into the unknown on your own.
Yes, most definitely. I think my life took some course in certain decisions that I probably never would have made. I remember the late Graham Beck already in 2006 said to me, "I want you to have your own label." And at that point, I mean, there were very, very few own label independent winemakers in South Africa. And I continue. I was so in love with the Graham Beck brand, and it was just the most amazing family to work with, and a very happy 12, 13 years that I spent there. So I actually never thought of leaving the group. And then, yeah, in 2008, 2009, it's ages ago, they started to relook the whole brand and the profitability, and they do amazing work for the whole environment and the people that work and the whole of South African wine industry. So yeah, when the decision had to be made to either continue with still wine and after they sold Franschhoek, what are we going to do? And eventually it worked out pretty good. I also had serious eye issues at the time, and I wasn't even able to drive anymore. So my I had 2 cornea transplants in the 2-3 years since I left Graham Beck. So that pushed me. I think that was the true decider in this whole thing, that I just had to do something myself. And I'm happy that I did, because if there's one place that where I'm really happy, and for me to just unbundle and divorce myself from Graham Beck was to just dive in and do something that's really close to my heart. And it's been absolutely amazing. The biggest challenge ever, but the most humbling experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
The irony of having those two cornea transplants at the same time as you had this extraordinary vision for what you wanted to do is not lost. And it's a vision that's constructed by the way you run your brand. There isn't a specific Erica Obermeier estate. You don't have one particular spot. Tell us how it works, how you source your grapes, and how you decide on what you choose to make these remarkable wines that you conjure up for us.
I was very lucky and fortunate to continue with the amazing relationships that I established while I was at Grainbeck. We always used to look at not only Grainbeck own produced fruit or own farm fruit. So I was in a good position to continue with these contracts because the grapes weren't used for the Grainbeck brand anymore. And that kind of just clinched the deal for me in the sense that I knew the vineyards really well and I didn't want to let go of these amazing vineyards. So I had to find a way to show them to everybody. And that's the real base of the Erica Obermeier wine brand, is that I want to showcase the amazing diversity of the South African winelands. We truly blessed with some of the best pockets, and to be able to produce, even if it's just a odd couple of barrels from a very specific vineyard, we're keeping those vineyards in the soil and we're giving a brand and a voice to the producer that often doesn't ever see their wine in a bottle. So it's been a really amazing journey. I've connected with new friends, new pockets, and it's just amazing. It's really a very passionate labor of love, but it's also something that's just amazing to see, that a farmer that has never seen his wine in a bottle being so excited and so almost becoming part of my brand. So it's all about success. I think we're stronger when we work together, certainly in the South African wine industry.
I love your approach. I love the way you've done that. And I love the romance of it all. Most importantly, though, I love the wine. And there's lots of it I'd love to be drinking right now. Probably if I had first choice, it would be a pick of your 2015 Cabernet Sauvignon, which I'm enamored with. And then you've got a red which you promised to name after me, and haven't seen that come to fruition yet, Erica. But I did love it. We're having to drink, as is the case with all of these live tastings, the wine that I do have in my cellar, and it makes for quite an interesting tasting because we're going to try two different Sauvignon Blancs. I'm never sure if it's Sauvignons Blanc or Sauvignon Blancs or Sauvignon Blanc, and then that's plural as it is. Whatever it is, we've got two of them, and this is the first of them. And I'm interested to see how they differ and how you put them together. This is the first, and it's called the Meticulous. And the obvious question to ask first up is, why Meticulous?
So that's almost the inside joke that became something that's on my bottle and now gets to be trademarked. It's very much my personality. Since I was a baby, I've always been very, very disciplined and very organized. I think Neil will say he doesn't agree, and certainly at home I'm probably not always, but definitely in the cellar. I think with wine making, it is an art, but to extract everything and to showcase that vineyard in a glass, you need to be very precise and have a goal and a certain plan how you want to get there. So Meticulous is definitely a nod on my personality, and then also on the very preciseness of this variety. It's definitely the diva of the wine world. She will definitely tell you when she's not happy. So everything needs to be very precise, and precision comes into every single decision that I take. Saying that, it's also that I don't want to interfere too much with what the vineyard is giving me. So it's a bit of a give and take here to give the vineyard the real voice and to tell the story in the glass. But that's definitely a nod to the variety.
We have two Sauvignon Blancs to try. There's the Erica O coming up in just a moment. This style, is it a case of I found these grapes and this is the style these grapes lent themselves to, or was it I want to make this type of Sauvignon Blanc, where can I find the grapes that will deliver?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly the Darling area, specifically the Groene Kloof, both of these wines are from the Groene Kloof wort, which is about 2 kilometers from the Eiserfontein coastal rim. It's just the most gorgeous piece of land for, I think it's one of South Africa's most amazing Sauvignon sites. In particular, that it's got quite a warm daytime, but a very cool night. So you always have the fog coming and the coastal mist coming in the mornings, and it cools down the vineyards, and it literally sits there. I always forget to take my jacket when I leave Stellenbosch, and I arrive in Darling, and it's so chilly, and that is the fact that I think gives the wine this amazing freshness. But then it heats up towards the mid of the day, and we need to remember that Darling Eiserfontein is just very, very close to the Swartland, so it's much warmer during the day, and the skins of the grape are slightly thicker than what you'll see in other cool areas. So it's a bit of both worlds, best of both. It's slightly more warmer, cool climate, and it just gives you this amazing concentration of fruit and richness, which I love about this area. So when I look at the vineyards, definitely the style that I want to make comes into play. So it's 2 different vineyards. Meticulous is from a younger vineyard on the coolest aspect of that farm. Just gorgeous, gorgeous newer plantings. Obviously, the canopy is really high, and it just delivers this amazing freshness. And the Erica O, which we will get to next, is one of the oldest Sauvignon Blanc vineyards planted in the Groenkloof area. The farm used to be used for wheat farming. And when the Bassons planted the Sauvignon, they were the first to plant Sauvignon Blanc when the ward opened up for amazing Sauvignon. And I'm so happy they did. So that's a much older vineyard, planted in 1997. And that just gives, it's almost like you can taste the richness in the grape itself. So it certainly lends itself to more rich and ripe style. And that will then go into a little bit of oak. And it's a style that I always wanted to make. The Pheasants Run at Grainbeck was very, very famous and very popular. I think Meticulous plays on that style. Bit more fresh fruit coming forward on Meticulous, whereas the Erica is definitely a wine that I will say is more an international palate, where it brings that complexity and the freshness and the linearity of the minerality almost to the fore, but it's so beautifully coated, fresh acidity, but that richness of the fruit just is what is giving it the length.
All right. Well, we've spoken enough of it. Let's have a taste of this Erica O. One last word on that Meticulous is the word you used many times is rich, and I think the richness comes through both because it's there, but also because, especially with South African Sauvignon Blanc, it's not always a characteristic we're used to finding. It's usually a bit sharper. There's a little bit more acidic, it's a little more narrow, whereas that's got a lovely depth to it, and richness is exactly the word.
Yes, absolutely. I think also something that I'm very, very believe strongly in is that we drink our Sauvignon Blancs way too young. I've tasted my 2019 Meticulous a week, 2 weeks ago, and it's completely too young to be released. I think there's definitely 2 styles, the fresh and fruity, where the vintage date is the sell-by date almost in South Africa, and there's definitely brands that needs to play there. People want to drink Sauvignon, especially in our climate when it's hot outside. It's a refreshing drink. But certainly for me, all my wines are made with the idea that they need to really go well with food, because I think wine ultimately becomes a conversation. It's the glue between conversation and food. And for Sauvignon to really work with food, it needs to have much less of that sharpness. And the only way to get that is to give it a bit of age. To use really good cool climate fruit, and just work on that. We only bottle towards the end of the year, so for me to release a wine in the vintage year is just never going to happen. And the wines certainly just develop so much more richness, and they just come together. So the acidity is not as sharp. It's just a much better wine 2-3 years down the line. I think the 2017s are drinking absolutely beautiful now. They probably still have another 8 years in them. So I hope we can convince people to just drink 5 bottles, but put 1 down and just see for yourself how amazingly well-made, cool climate Sauvignon Blanc can age.
Preach, Erica, preach. We need this message to get out to more and more people. Just had my first mouthful of the the Erica O, and I think I need to set some people straight here because many people think the Erica O is Erica Obermeyer, when in fact I know the story. You gave the very first glass of this to Neil, who oversees all of the marketing and pretends to work hard, and it was more a case of Erica. Oh my God, that's good, and that's how the name came out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you absolutely. And he was completely flabbergasted by them all. So that's why we called our Cinzo flabbergasted. Oh, he's a really good marketing buddy, and he's got some clever ideas. So I need to listen to him more often.
That is great. If you had to, there are a lot of people who watch this show who are very early on in their wine journey, and sometimes we risk being a little bit too complex in our analysis of wine. We get a little bit carried away in the language of wine. It can sometimes be a bit too much for people who are early in their journey. In very layman's terms, if you could sum up very quickly the difference between these two Sauvignon Blanc for someone who's watching, thinks, I kind of like white wine, I don't know that much about it. What's the difference which would lead me to buy one over the other?
I think with Meticulous is definitely more fruit driven. More the fruit's more forward. It's slightly fresher. It's probably going to go with a dish that's not so complex, not as rich. So it's amazing for sushi, for salads, for fresh fish, or just to have next to the swimming pool on a hot day. Whereas the Erica is a little bit more serious. It's got a little bit more in terms of weight, and it's definitely going to carry much further, and it can stand up to more richness and more complex flavors. So maybe the one is the one in the bikini, and the other one is in the bodysuit, in the full costume. She's a bit more just reserved, where the Meticulous is more forward and outgoing, I would say.
That is a perfect summary, and I think that wraps it up very nicely. But before I let you go and go and finish off that wine, I'm going to take a step out of shot for a moment, because I've got a bottle I'd like to show you just before you go. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, there we go. So this I found in my cellar when I was looking through a little earlier. There is a 2011 The Joshua.
Oh, you can auction that. There's nothing available. Nowhere you can find the Joshua. I think I still have like 2 bottles, so I'm even prepared to buy that back from you. And I know if you phone the Graham Beck CEO, Chris du Toit, he will give you big money for that. So maybe we need to start and donate it to charity. Come on, Dan. The Joshua was a very close to my heart wine, so enjoy it. It's a beautiful wine.
It certainly is. Great memories, but new ones being created as well. And you're doing that very quickly and to great effect with the Erica Obermeyer brand. Thank you, because you've added such a lovely dimension to our wine landscape over the last few years. You make extraordinarily good wine, and you do so with a huge smile and a great deal of passion. And that's exactly what we need. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining me here. And I cannot wait till we're sitting down again in a restaurant somewhere and drinking some wine together rather than through the medium of computers.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, and keep on doing the good work, Dan. Thank you very much.
So there we go. Erica Obermeyer. What a story it has been. She was making the still wine at Graham Beck. Graham Beck decided as a brand they were just going to go with the bubbles. Erica had to find a new path, and gee, has she trod an almighty one over the last few years. 5 stars all over the place, and the Platter Newcomer of the Year for 2019, and lots of accolades since then. So she is a very successful woman in wine, which is a nice segue to another very successful woman in wine. Now, I have to warn you here that before we head over to the lady who is responsible for the extraordinary collection of wine that is the KWB Mentors series, she did threaten earlier to sing opera. Now, if she does, I've got nothing to do with it. It's not my fault. She's been drinking since lunchtime. She threatened to hang up if I do that. Hello, Isolde Van Black.
Hey, Dan, how are you? I could hear everything you said now, eh?
We won't make you sing, but we will make you tell us a few stories and drink some wine with us. And I've been really looking forward to this, because part of the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, of doing these live tastings at the moment is going through my cellar and seeing what I've got. and then phoning people up to say, can you do a tasting with me? Because I've got some of your wine at the moment. And I'd had squirreled away in a corner this collection of the Mentors that I'd completely forgotten about. And one of the great things about forgetting about wine is you're not tempted to drink it too early. And so now all of a sudden I find myself with some older wine, which I've got opened and I'm going to jump into really quickly. But before I do that, a couple of important things. And the first of those is this range itself. We know KWV, it's a hugely established brand. It's done so much for South African wine over so many years, and we're very proud of it as a brand. What is the Mentors in the context of KWV, and where does that name come from? What does it mean?
Okay, so the Mentors cellar was created in 2006 as an experimental cellar. And ever since that, we've been trialing with different varietals, different barrels. It's basically a small little library of KWV. So everything that works in this cellar, we take to the bigger cellars, and then we will take it and say, darling Shiraz from this specific block, we will use 30% whole bunches. So it's basically the small little library and lab that we can play around as winemakers. And fortunate for us, the wines don't look that bad. So we decided at the end of 2006 to start bottling these wines. We didn't start the Mentors cellar to actually bottle wines. It was just to be an experimental cellar to improve the whole brand of KWV, to improve all the wines. So that's the whole story behind the Mentors cellar.
And in terms of the Mentors, is that referring to particular people? Who were the Mentors?
Yes, there's a few icons in the wine industry. Like Ian McKenzie, who was an Australian that worked at KWV. We had a few like Richard Rowe, Neil Ellis, Charles Beck from Fairview. Everyone played a big part at KWV and in the Mentors range. And also the winemakers that came through the ranks of the Mentors is wine. A lot of people that have icons, they're looking up to icons like Erica, Bayer Streeter, and I must tell you this story. When I did my first vintage, I applied at KWV because I grew up in Paarl, and I knew Erica we lived in Ceres as well, so I knew Erica and she was a winemaker, and so I went to her and I spoke to her and asked her, should I actually go and do a harvest at KWV or should I go to Graham Beck? And she told me, no, go to KWV, you're going to learn a lot at KWV. So I must actually thank Erica. Now I'm 10 years at KWV. But yeah, there's a lot of icons in the wine industry that we look up to and that played a big part in the Mentors cellar and the Mentors range.
Which has culminated in some terrific wine. Before we go into it, some comments have been pouring through, and I've just got them now. Irene Matthias saying, great, Erica. Keep making good wine. Annie Kyle Kitts, tasted wine with Erica at the Wine Village in Hermanus in December. I'm a total convert. Alisa Kilda, incredible wines from Erica Obermeyer. Frankensense, I'm not sure that's a real name. 2017 Meticulous is absolutely sublime. Had it with the Thai prawn curry, unbelievable. Manuel Cabello, who cuts the lawn and washes windows and cleans cars at Element House. The Bolivian general assistant, very switched on, great winemaker. Skulk Stapelberg says he's going to try it for sure. And also saying KWV, fantastic. And a couple of people all are wishing they could have a little bit of wine at the moment. Well, I tell you what, if you don't have any wine with you at the moment, we are going to drink some wine for you because Azelle and I are very selfless and generous that way. And we're going to try two wines, and for two different reasons, I'm really excited about them both. And the first of them speaks to part of the conversation I had with Erica just a few minutes ago, and that was talking about the aging. She was going on about the Sauvignon Blanc being drunk too young, which is a big problem in South Africa. But our understanding of aging often ends at red wine, and it's such a pity because when we make red wine, white wine in particular, the stronger wines, Semillon here is a great example, the potential to just grow and develop and become something quite magical with time is there to be had if you just have the patience.
The thing is, for me, I think the biggest gem in South Africa currently is the ageability of our white wines. I think the world haven't discovered that yet. I'm currently drinking 2009 white wines at home. And the nice thing about the lockdown is I had the opportunity now to open 2009 Semillons, 2012 Semillons, Sauvignon Blancs. And it's always so interesting when you open a bottle of 2012 and you pour it and the people don't see the label, they will say, no, it's 2017. And then I'm like, no, it's 2012. And the people won't believe you. I think in South Africa in particular, we think we need to drink the 2021 white wines at the moment. But I think you're missing out in wine if you haven't had a 5 or 10-year-old white wine. And the ageability, especially Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon. I know a lot of people used to say Chardonnay and Chenin age a lot better, but I've been drinking now 10-year-old Sauvignon Blancs and Semillons, and it's just keep on getting better. It's interesting how you taste 09 Semillon in 2012 and you think you need to drink all your wine, it's reached their peak. And then 2 years after that, it just keeps on getting better. And I made a lot of mistakes in my life that I drank a lot of white wine too early. And I won't do that again.
Let's drink a little bit of slightly older white wine together. This is the 2014 Semillon, and this comes from Darling.
Yes, also Darling region, Groene Kloof. The vineyard is about 15 years old. 25% of the wine's been in barrel, but only 25% is new oak. So we split it up in 25% new oak, 25% second, third, and fourth fill barrels. And it's interesting how good Semillon does with a lot older barrels and also 500-liter barrels. But the nice thing about Semillon is it's not the winemaker that makes the wine, it's the vineyards. You can use different...
Never tell people that ever. Don't tell people that.
It's the one varietal that you can't cheat on. It's like what you get in the vineyard, you're going to get in the wine. So this is the viticulture wine. So this goes to Marco Ventrella, our viticulturist, and it's like what they do in the vineyards is they just bring the grapes in, and I can say, well, it's good or it's not going to be good, because it's all really, Semillon is one of those varietals. You can trial with different yeast, different winemaking techniques, using different NTUs, using different barrels, but if the grapes aren't good, you're not going to make a good Semillon.
The Semillon as a wine in South Africa, it's one that I almost feel we don't have enough respect for it in South Africa, that it's something that sits in the odd white blend, but on its own, we often neglect it. And yet here's a really good example of just how good South African Semillon can be.
When Semillon goes through like 4 to 5 different stages in its life, where you get the primary fruit, and then as it gets older, it gets a bit of bottle age, it turns into this beautiful little waxy. For me now, when you smell this wine, it's tin peas. It's like that green, almost cut grass. And I think this wine is still too young. We need at least 5 more years. If you don't have a bottle, I'll make sure you'll get one. Don't worry.
You were saying you've been drinking the 2009 and it's drinking perfectly. And I can well believe that. I think 2 years ago, I don't have a rating or ranking system with Dan Really Likes Wine. I just enjoy lots of different wines. But I'll often have some of my best wines of a year. And 2 years ago, probably my 2 best white wines were from Haute-Espoir from Waterford, and they were both 2004 Chardonnay. So not Semillon, but white wine that at that stage was 14 years old. But we're getting some more feedback in. Massey Mate, you go Isel. You've got some fans out there. Massey leading the cheers. Charmaine Walters is watching. Love to have you back on, Charms. Skulk Stapelberg discovered a bottle of 2009 Bon Espérance during lockdown. It says KWV at the back. Would that be right?
Yes. Yes, it's also KWV.
Well, you got about 300 labels, so it's in there somewhere. And then I see Greg Sherwood, who's tuned in from London, saying he used to love tasting for the Nederburg auction and enjoying the Mentors range at lunch afterwards. That range wouldn't have lasted long. Mr. Sherwood is a very thirsty man. And also saying that KWV and Nederburg ranges are often underappreciated. And just before we go to the orchestra, it's a question I'll ask you that I asked Neil from Nederburg a few weeks back on the tasting. Do you feel that KWV sometimes suffers as a brand because you've been so successful, because you are so well known, that in the wine snob space, for want of a better term, it's often, oh no, that's a KWV. I want to drink something that's made organically under a tree halfway up a hill near Swartland by a barefoot man with a beard who strained the wine through a checked shirt and then had it in papyrus for 6 years. Is there a challenge for the KWV brand of almost being a victim of your own success?
Oh, yes. I do sometimes walk barefoot in the cellar and cut my shorts and try to grow the hair and do all of that. But I think there's a place for everyone. I think there's really the smaller boutique wineries, really we need them in the wine industry. And for KWV, they help us because it opens up the brand South Africa. When you travel internationally, you've got a KWV, you've got a Nederburg, you've got a Distell, you've got a DGB. We open the doors for a lot of brands internationally, but we also need them. We also need the smaller producers because it's something to talk about. It's something interesting. They really exceptional winemakers, and they bring their attention a lot to South Africa. And yes, with the Mentors range, we try to showcase that we as a bigger company can also produce top quality and premium wines. And that's why we did our launch in the UK last year of the Mentors range. And it's the first time that we did an international launch on a premium brand. And I think that also opened up a lot of doors for South African brands in Europe. So we need smaller wineries and we need smaller brands, and I think they need us too. So it's a very
it's a
win-win situation. And I traveled to Canada 5 years ago, and it's like when you walk into a LCBO or SAQ, you don't see just KWV, you see brand South Africa. And that's what we need to start building all across the world, not just focusing on your own brand. We need to start building one big brand. And I think we're on the right way, and I think we're going to get there in a few years.
Wise words. I couldn't agree with you more. And we're going to get there nice and quickly with wines like the ones we're drinking now, because it is so important that our big brands are putting out such great quality wine. And we're wrapping up this week with one that I've been salivating over since I first chatted to you about doing this. And this is the 2011 Orchestra, the Bordeaux Blend. And the first question here for you, which for me shows foresight that it wasn't usual at the time you would have made this wine, because this is 2011, it's almost a decade ago, and you've got it in a screw cap for a top-end red wine in South Africa on a screw cap. Most people would have been fired for trying to do that, and yet now we know just how much good a screw cap can do for the preservation of wine. It might lack a little of the romance, but in terms of the functionality, it's a step above, unfortunately, a lot of the corking options. And so 2011, you made this call, but why was that decision made? What was the spark of inspiration that said this is the way to go?
So I started at KWV in 2009, very wet behind the ears still, walking out of university, started at KWV, and the chief winemaker at that time was Richard Rowe, very knowledgeable guy. I was very fortunate to get my first winemaking opportunity under his wing, and he was Australian, and he is Australian, he's still alive and living. And he believed that screw cap was the next best thing. And we did in 2007. We went with the first time we bottled the Mentors wines under screw cap. But I must tell you, in 2016, we moved all our Mentors red wines back to Cork with a new exciting marketing team. Like you said, the romantic side of it, people paying a premium price for premium wine. And we're also looking at putting wax on it. And yeah, so, but the ageability of red wine, like if we're going to taste now, it's exceptional. It's like the wine is still very reductive. Even if it lost its primary fruits, it went to a very different style, but it's still very reductive, and it can use decanting.
Sadly, I haven't decanted mine, and as a result, I've got a little bit of added flavor on the palate because I have a small insect who has said goodbye to the world by depositing himself inside the wine. But I will drink on bravely because I think
the wine must be good because the insect is inside.
So this is Bordeaux. Where are these grapes from, and what have we got in here?
Okay, so I'm not going to sing. I actually, when you had the interview with Erika, I was walking up and down and trying to do the opera, and I wanted to surprise you, but I thought no. The people would all just say, no, we're not going to listen to this anymore. So I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's a 5 varietal Bordeaux blend, Cabernet Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, and Malbec. And in this 2011 to 2015 till 2016 is all 5 Bordeaux varietals. And 2017, we added the 6th Bordeaux varietal, Carmenère. So, yeah, that's the exciting part of 2017 and 18. It's got Carmenère in it. But this grapes from Stellenbosch, the Malbec, the Merlot, the Petit Verdot, and the Cabernet Franc is all from Stellenbosch. And then the Cabernet is from Paul, a bit from Wellington, and then a bit from Darling. It's almost on the same route, just across the road from where the Semillon is from. So it's a very diverse wine. But at the end, when you start blending, this is quite an interesting blending process, where you start tasting all the Petit Verdots, all the Cabernets, all the Merlots, all the Cabernet Francs and Malbecs, and then I start tasting all the specific barrels. And it's like an orchestra. All the different instruments doesn't always make the best sound on its own. All the different Bordeaux varietals doesn't always make the best wine on its own. But adding them together, they make a perfect wine and they make an orchestra. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this wine. I've been looking forward to tasting this wine.
I have to be honest, I have been listening to you, but it's been a challenge because you've got great competition from this wine, which I've had the first few sips of. And I'm almost kicking myself that I've opened it now because it's still so fresh that it's saying to me, well, yeah, hang on for another few years. This has got more time to go. It needs more.
And that's the thing about the screw cap, because it just keeps the wine reductive. And we focus quite a lot with bottling. We focus quite a lot on the oxygen management, the pH management, and the acidity. So this wine, we protect it almost like the white wine. So you actually need to decant it. I think I'll decant it tonight, and then I'll let you know later on how it tastes.
You mentioned the addition of Carmenère. Am I right in saying that you've now got 100% Carmenère that you're also making in small volumes?
Yes, we launched the 2017 limited edition. It's our first of our limited editions, and it's 100% Carmenère. From Stellenbosch, the vineyards is 1.15 hectares, and we're the second in South Africa to launch 100% Carmenère. But yeah, there's only 1,300 bottles, and I can proudly say it's sold out. So every single year, there's going to be a different limited edition. And the next one, the 2018, I unfortunately can't tell you what it is now. You'll have to wait till September this year to find out, and there's only 1,000 bottles available.
I'm sorry I missed your Cabernet. I had some of that Lausanne, which I think was the first Cabernet to come in out of Robertson. The grape accidentally found in a back garden in Chile and turned into something magical. But there's obviously a real sense of invention. And as I look at some of the questions that are coming through, Irene Matthias, watching Rowan Becker, and then Schalk Stapelberg, who is obsessed with putting pinotage in wine. I think he'd like your Sauvignon Blanc to have some pinotage if he had his way. Wants to know, will there be a Cape blend on its way?
We actually have the Perrault. We included it now. We changed the name to the Mentors Perrault. So we included it to the Mentors range now, because it was always, we focused on the Mentors range, and then we had Perrault, and that was a Cape blend. So now it's the Mentors Perrault. So we actually have a Cape blend in the Mentors range. So we've got a Rhone style blend, a Bordeaux style blend, and then a Cape blend. Also
Great selection. Before we wrap up, and I go and drink 4 bottles of wine very excitedly, and then tell my wife I've run out. The KWV brand at the moment is obviously an exciting space. You're in an exciting time with the different wines that you're making. But above and beyond that, we know it's a very difficult time for the wine industry. We know that consumers are desperate to try and get their hands on some wine. We know that the estates and the brands would love to be selling it at the moment. What is putting a smile on your face at the moment, Iselle? What's making you proud of the industry, excited about the future, happy to be in the place that you are now?
It's interesting how we've been working through lockdown, just a small group of winemakers and cellar team, just trying to float the boat and making sure that the wines of 2020 is in good condition, healthy. And we've been racking for the past 2 weeks. We've been racking the wines of the MLF lease, malolactic lease, and 2020 vintage is looking exceptional. The wines are tasting exceptional. Watch out for South Africa in 2020. And for me personally, I think coming together as a team, KWV, and the industry, and working together and making everything work during a situation that we had the drought, and now we've got lockdown, and what's going to be next. But as I always say, South Africans is very competitive, very tough people, hard workers, and I think we'll make it work. And the world must watch out. 2021 is going to be exceptional from South Africa.
It's almost an argument for setting up an entrepreneur market in South Africa, because everybody I speak to is raving about 2020. And granted, most people in the wine industry tell you every year is the best year ever. But this time it seems like everybody really means it. So very excited. It's a few years, of course, until we see that wine. So we'll make do with the older stuff until now. That Semillon in particular, I'm loving the orchestra, but that old white wine, I just got a very special place for it. So thank you for the chance to share it and for sharing your knowledge and your passion, Iselle. Keep making wonderful, wonderful wine, and let's have a few glasses in person when lockdown allows.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. Have a good evening. I think you're going to have a good evening with all the wine.
I certainly will. The best of Iselle van Blerk and the best of Erica Obermeyer. So that wraps us up for another live tasting. Now, because of our technical challenges yesterday, we fast forwarded it to today, which means we are back tomorrow with more wine. We will be chatting to some guys. In fact, I think I've got a bottle of their wine right here. Yes, there we go. We've got the guys from Siemensig. We'll be trying some bubbles as well as a Cape blend. So Skalk Stapelberg, we've got a Cape blend, the France Malin, to try tomorrow. So make sure you're tuned in. And we'll also be speaking to one of my favorite people in the wine industry. He's one of the best sommeliers on the planet. Wikus Human will be joining us, the guy behind Marble and Saints Wine List, as he features this week on the sommelier series that we're running with Nederburg that's been getting some great coverage. So until tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we will see you then with Simonsek and with Wikus from Marble. A huge thank you to Erica for sharing her wine and her story, and to Azelle for doing the same. And don't forget to be online. Have a look at that wine shop on the Pick n Pay online store. Become a member of the Pick n Pay Wine Club, and you've got a chance to get some great prices on great South African wine and celebrate and support an industry that does so much for South Africa, as you've seen with our two fantastic guests today. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being part of Dan Really Likes Wine and our live wine tasting, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.